Hello, and welcome to Tech Time Live with BEA's technical department. I'm Rob Rivera, and along with us is Jake DiBattista and Jonathan Ott. And today we're going to be covering a quick little tech tip on MicroScan, the sensor system. So we call it a sensor system because it is both on the approach side and the swing side of the door, and it has to be like that. So saying that, we're going to cover first the physical aspects about the MicroScan sensor head itself. Knowing this will make it extremely easy and fast to troubleshoot. So many people ask us why the sensor cover is hard to remove. Well, this is a laser sensor, and lasers are perfect. So we have to accommodate that by making the covers very tight so there's no loose parts or jumbling around with anything inhibiting the light. So that being said, the sensor itself, we're going to show you how to remove the sensor if this sensor was attached to a door. So we have to use a little bit of imagination. We can show you how to remove the sensor head itself without removing the whole bracket very quickly. First, we want to point out a couple of attributes that you have. The sensor harnesses on the sides, you'll see the little ports on one side and one on the other as well. Both of those ports parallel on the same point, so you can always swap cables. It doesn't matter with that, and the sensor will self-configure. Another aspect of the sensor head is they are handed. You can see this one has a red arrow that says right mount. It's supposed to the hinge side, so that's to be mounted on the top right. Also, you'll note a little edged R, which is for the right. So the molding of the sensor is actually manufactured for a right hand sensor. So two good ways to know what hand your sensor is. I would always double check with that etched in part. So that being said, so now you could go to, there's one single screw on the back side of the sensor that you can see. That single screw, when you remove that screw, that's really the only thing that's binding this down other than the brackets. So of course you remove the screw, and then you would remove the cabling from either the plugins, and then there's two little ear brackets on each side. So you can simply spread those little ears on it and pull the sensor out of it. So now the bracket that you see there could stay attached to the door, and you can just swap sensor heads very quickly. So this is great for troubleshooting. And how is this great for troubleshooting? Because if you had a system, a pair of doors, as an example, a pair of doors, dual egress doors, you could simply take this. If you had a problem, you don't know where the problem is, you can turn it into a single door by going to your hub, which we will do later. But you could turn it into a single door and do a learn on your right door, and on its own, turn it to single door, unplug door B sensor, and just plug into door A. And then you would go conduct a tune-in, teach-in, and if it's successful, then you know you have a good door. Then you plug the other door in, and if you had the teach-in did not conduct properly, you're like, voila, I know which door is causing the problem. So now you could simply remove the sensor-like heads from the door that is good and just really quickly swap them out to the other door just one at a time. And you know that they're handed, so you can properly put them in, and you can troubleshoot and say, okay, this one sensor causes me the problem. Or if the problem stays there, even though you put a sensor head that has been fully tested and is working, you go, okay, that's my harness, because I have a good sensor that I verified, put it in there. So this is a really easy way to troubleshoot a system, and knowing how to remove these sensor heads makes it really easy for you. So that being said, let's move on to the hub. So we can show you some really easy things that you may or may not know on the hub. One thing is you can see the LZR-R0. This is a self-diagnostic test that it tests, is it communicating with the lefts and the rights? Obviously, if you have a pair or dual egress, you'll have L2, R2, because you'll have two of each. If you have a single, you have L1, R1. So if you see an L1, R0, you have a problem there. So that being said, you can go into this by simply pushing your gray button. And this will take you, well, that is the ActSafe S1. This is your home screen. So if you ever want to know where is my home screen, this is what you'll primarily see. So if you click it one more time, push and release the gray knob button, now you'll see the 3 dots, and the 3 dots stand for which page you're on. So if you choose more, you'll go to the second dot. If you choose back, you'll go to the previous dot. Right now, we're going to go to, just scroll to the guide rail, for example. And guide rail is always set out of the box. Right now, this one has been played with. You know, we've set it to 31, but guide rail is on 0. I would never recommend leaving it on 0. That means there's nothing behind the door. So changing it to 1, even if you had a wall on the backside, tells it that when it's going back to learn something. So at least always set it on 1. If you have, obviously, if you measure your guide rail, then set it, I usually set it 2 inches above my guide rail. So now going on to some of the technical, we can go to page 3, we can go to more and go more again, and we'll be on the 3rd screen. From here, we can go, and I wanted to show you first that you can go scroll through and go to disk sensor. Let's go to disk sensor first. So just real quick, this will give you a display of all of your inputs, A1, A2, PP. This is directly, PP is your push plates for your knowing activation, HM is your home switch, MO is your motion. So that'll tell you if there's an input. If you're holding your door open, you can find out where right here. So moving on, now we can go to power supply. When you go into power supply, you will see the power that the sensor, that this is seeing. Now, I would recommend measuring the voltage from your power supply with a good quality meter and making sure this matches your meter. If this is seeing power that your meter is not, then you could have a problem with your hub. It's always a potential, and that's one of the things tools we give you. So now, going from here, you can go into your error log. So when you go into your error log, you have the potential to see up to 20 errors. And you can see 0, 1, 2 up in the tops. And you can also see the messages. You can see L approach. That's telling you it's a left-hand approach side or right-hand safe side. So it tells you if it's on the approach, tells you which one it is. So this is a great way to troubleshoot. It also tells you lost message. And as an example, the lost message would be the sensor head and the hub speak in computer language, which is packets. If it sends, the sensor sends 100 packets and it only counts 96, that would be a lost message. That's how it determines that. We have troubleshooting guides that we'd be happy to send anybody who wants them that tell you what all of these pre-programmed, and the user guide in the troubleshooting area also tells some of these. So that's a great way to go. Anytime you do this, I would always recommend going to, after you've done your troubleshooting, after you've got your door back and running, go to your erase log or reset log, I believe it's labeled. And here at the reset log, you can simply go in and hit yes, and voila, the next time you come, if you had any problems, you rest assured that those are new problems, not existing. It helps you trying to differentiate what's been going on with your door. So that being said, I think we've pretty much covered everything, unless you know of anything, Jake, that we've missed.
So we talked about when you get an error on the hub. Now, does the sensor show any indication of there being an error on it when the hub shows an error?
Well, yes, there are a few things you can look out, and that's a great question. So the sensors themselves have a blinking amber light if you have an error, but there are several different levels of errors on these. Sometimes you'll notice it's not amber, but it'll blink or be steady red, even though the door is closed and it won't work. So obviously that could be an input. It could be the sensor could have been hit, the harness could have been pulled, something event could have happened, and it's now twisted out of position. So, but to know that, really, you use these exact techniques that we're showing you. You can go to the display sensor, disp sense, in the third page of the hub, and you can see which sensor is constantly sending a signal. And if it's just sending a signal, you can probably just conduct a tune in and see if it's a problem sensor at that point, or if it has just been hit. But there's lots of techniques on troubleshooting, hone it down quite quickly.
Okay, one of these questions, yes, we do have a spreadsheet with the error codes. It's actually in the user's guide. You want to flip through to almost the very end.
The troubleshooting guide, that's very thorough. It's very thorough. It actually tells you how to read the screen, even with NB on the troubleshooting screen. When you actually see a problem with the hub, and you go into it and read it live, it'll actually tell you NB 1, 2, 3, or 4. That is the number of sensor heads that are in error. And if you looked at your sensors, then you'd probably see 1 or 2 of them that are amber, kind of a yellowish color. So what that means is your sensor heads are telling you what your screen is telling you, matching that only 1 or 2 of them are in error. And it's an excellent little tool again. So please, yeah.
Let's see. So Rob, what would you say the most common microscan call is?
The most from the calls that I see is usually a door holding open or door holding closed. Now, and it depends on when, because on brand new installs, I see a lot of the misunderstanding of the home switch. The home switch is also on the hub, and it gives you when the door is closed. It gives you the kind of orange LED because it's on the orange wires on the systems harness, and it will not do a learn. It will not conduct a teach-in at all if your home switch is not closed when your door is closed. So that's probably the most common on an install. But on a service level, we see that the doors either being held open or closed. And I tell techs always, then it's a matter of being a master of the obvious. We look around and see if we can find what has changed in the area. Because again, lasers are perfect. They see everything, and they're very consistent. They don't change from day to day. So if you look, was your sensor hit by something when somebody walked in and out of the door? I've even had a few calls where they said, you know what, my bottom pivot is going bad, and it tilted their door because it was an international bottom pit type pivot. And even that set it off to where it made the trajectory of the door off kilter. So it could be anything like that. Those are the 2 most common calls that I see. I don't know. What about you, Jake?
I would agree about home switch, maybe even the lost message error. If someone's bumping a door with a grocery cart and it throws off the system, it'll throw a lost message. You want to make sure a cable didn't get pinched, the damage isn't on the sensor. Maybe it just messed up the gyro a little bit and it got itself back on track. But
right.
Those are pretty common.
And that's where, if you do have a pair, you could borrow from one door, turn it into a single door, and troubleshoot it. It literally takes me 15 minutes to troubleshoot. I've had some guys dare me to come out in the field and say that and actually back it up, and I have. And they're like, wow, you can, if you know what you're doing and you know what to look for and you know how to use the system. But if you have a single door, that's where having another harnesses are very inexpensive. And, just carrying an extra set of sensor heads on you, if you're going to use this system, you're going to want to have the equipment to back it up. If you go out on a call, it's not enjoyable to have to order a sensor every time you need one. It's worth it to carry one right and one left on your van, along with a harness, a pass-through cable, and the main harness going from the sensor up into the hub. And they're very easy to change. So that is a great way to troubleshoot them very quickly. I got a question here. Fuse monitoring, there is a setting you need to change on the hub. Yes, if you want monitoring this, now there's 2 things about the sensor system. Again, it's a system. So it is monitoring its sensors at all time. So it is a monitored system, and you do have blues and purples that allow you to monitor 2 of the different functions of the sensor, which would primarily be the approach side and the swing side. And you could go in and you can tell it what you want to monitor specifically, and you can turn monitoring on or off at that point. We also have a couple of settings in there that you can go to active high and active low on the second screen. And here's where you can go through monitoring, stall, just one, safety install, activation, activation install. So, you know, that allows you to monitor everything. Why would you want to monitor activation? Because it's a reactivation on the approach side of the sensor. Now, if you scroll through a little bit more, you'll see the monitoring active high and active low. Essentially look at those like they're languages. The active, you'd have to get with the manufacturers. Most manufacturers are using active low, but there are a few that are using active high. And you have to match what the door manufacturer uses to make sure it's communicating properly. So that hopefully that answers that. If I install a new control and I retune the old door, do I have to perform a new sensor system learn? In most cases, no. I've had to replace controls that have had a problem. The door wouldn't work. In most cases, I've hooked up the information on these is designed for power outages. If you powered down the doors and you power back up, they would go through a self-diagnostic and kick back up and start functioning again. But that doesn't, we have had some people remove a door and replace a door. And yeah, the position of the sensor changed enough to where it had to be relearned. So sometimes I can't guarantee that wouldn't be something you might not have to do. But in most cases, replacing a door, if you position the sensor exactly where it was before, and if you replace the control and nothing major has changed, you should be able to kick it back up and it'll just work. Hopefully, let's see, Bob Parker is here. My buddy Bob. Use monitoring on setting. Do you need to change the hub? If you use monitoring, is there a saying? Oh, good. I think we answered that one. I think that was fully answered. Both with both settings and codes we're showing in the hub at the same time once in a manual, especially when the program in a new system.
So I had a comment about that. So when you're looking at the error, it's going to say NB1 or NB2 or NB4. So that's telling you how many sensors are part of the error, if it's 1, 2, or 4. So make sure you're not mixing that up with what's actually displayed with the error below, because it'll say NB2 EDPS. The EDPS is the error. The NB2 is talking about the amount of sensors.
Right, and I'll show you, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen for a second and show you this part of the, let's see here. So this part of our little setup and troubleshooting guide, setup, it says NB, number of sensors that are in error, NB4, height angle error in the information logo. So it actually gives you some great information. It tells you if you had all 4 sensors in error, more than likely you would start pointing to the hub or something in the setup, because what are the odds of 4 sensors going bad? You know, not very high. When I have seen this, another thing that we've seen, most techs are getting by this now, but height angle error, if you have the sensors, they are handed. If you have them positioned in the wrong place because they are supposed to be a right approach or right hinge, right side or left side, if you had all 2 of them wrong, you could have all 4 of them wrong, and that would give you an NB, and that would give you usually a startup error, or it wouldn't learn, or it can give you the height angle error. Can actually give you a few different, but that's the troubleshooting guide that I'm talking about goes through and tells you this is why I like it so much. Height angle, it tells you the cause, solutions. Go to EDPS, it tells you cause and solutions, and it goes down through all of them. I love this log because it makes your life really, really easy. It lists them out clearly, concisely, and gives you a lot of information. For a technician out in the field, it's a lifesaver. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay, well, I hope everybody's enjoyed it. I always love doing these. One more question. Let's see. What do I have to do installing just push plates? Okay, so for just push plates, as you're seeing on the far right-hand side, you see the system. On the system harness, there is 2 gray wires. The gray wires are an activation for push plates. Matter of fact, as I showed you in the display sensor screen, you saw PP. That is the gray wires. So the gray wires are always active for push plates. Motion 1 and motion 2 are for an eagle sensor, motion sensor. Now, if you have this set to knowing act, and you have knowing act turned on, it's gonna allow motion 1 and motion 2 to function. I'm sorry, it disallows, it does not allow motion 1 and motion 2 to function when knowing act is on. Only the gray wires are the activation. And that makes it also to where the approach side sensors do not activate the door when the door is in the closed position. But when you turn knowing act off, you're telling it is a fully automatic door, and it enables motion 1 and motion 2 to activate the door, and it will actually turn the approach side sensors on even in the closed position, when the doors are in the closed position. So that is something that you need to know, not only for motion sensors, but also if you have a door that has locks on it, you may want to run your motion sensors through your gray harness, so it goes through an access system. So you see it does, when you walk up to the doors, it doesn't try and open the doors when they're locked. So just food for thought. Do you have options to set up different sensitivity on pull and push side? You do have, I wouldn't call it sensitivity, but I would call it range. If you go into the second screen, you will go to act distance, and that's set at 24, and I believe it goes 12 minimum, 48 maximum. That's the approach side sensor. The act distance is the approach side sensor, how far away if it is from the door. And if you go into safety, it works on deep, medium, and limited. And that turns off. Limited is 2 curtains, medium is 3 curtains, and deep is all 4 curtains. So I think hopefully that covers everything. That is clear to everyone. Anybody who needed my email to get that troubleshooting guide, please feel free to email me. I love sending that thing out and makes your life a million times easier. One last question. So is the sensor looking at the floor while the door is moving then? Looking at the floor? No, laser time of flight technology has a very specific ability to see a programmed distance. When you do a learn initially, it looks at the ground and retracts by 4 inches. And when you set the door A and door B zone, you're telling it how far to see. That's why you want to subtract it away from the jam or the size of the door. You want to retract it, drop the change. If it was 36.5, you drop the ½ inch and then -1 inch. So it'd be 35 inches. So it does not see the jam. So it does not going to see anything theoretically as it opens and closes. And the swing side does have the ability to learn a wall and learn a guide rail as long as you set it on 1 or greater. So, so just to be clear, so the reason you would subtract like such, and there's a lot of different types of doors, If you're working on a door that has a physical stop, it would be the physical stop would be a ½ inch. So if you measure the physical door itself, when it's in the closed position, you'd subtract a ½ inch for that stop, and then you'd minus an inch. So you're getting a ½ inch. So you cannot see that stop. But like if you have a storefront door, which these are very common on storefront doors, you just subtract by 1 inch to make sure you comply with the ANSI standards. So I hope everybody's enjoyed this, and I hope you got some good knowledge out of it. Again, keep my email me if you want a troubleshooting guide, and thanks everybody for attending.